And joining us today on Practical 365 is Stephen Rose from Microsoft. For those of you that don't know you, Stephen, do you want to tell us a little bit more about you and what you do?
Sure. I've been an IT pro for about 25 years. I've been at Microsoft for 12. I previously was an MVP before coming to Microsoft. And it was the hardest thing to give up my MVP status because I'd been certified since NT40 and, had to know DOS as part of the A+ exams and all that. But gave that up. I've worked in Windows. I've worked on the OneDrive SharePoint team. And for the last almost 2 years now, I've been on the Teams group. So excited to be here, really happy, and still very focused on helping IT pros to get the most out of our product.
So this has been a busy year for people, rolling out Teams to people. And I know a lot of people who've rolled out Teams have focused very much at the beginning of their rollouts on calls and meetings and have started to dive into some of the security areas. And now they're looking outside to see what else it can do. So I keep hearing Teams is a platform, and I've got a good idea of what that means. But I wanted to talk to you a bit more about what Microsoft mean by a platform and how we look at other things outside of those core functionalities that Teams has. How do we build on top of it? Because isn't that what a platform is?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at other products that compete with ours, things like Zoom or Slack, those are apps. Zoom is used for video chat and calling. You cannot do large collaboration, file sharing, automation, things like that. And the same with Slack, you have to have a calling aspect of that. We look at Teams as a platform, and it's so much more than collaboration and calling. We have first line worker aspects, but at the core, we have last look, I think over 700 different third-party applications that plug directly into Teams, like SAP and Salesforce and Jira and all of those. But also, because it is a platform, you can actually build your own apps with it. And we're seeing folks that are doing things like approval applications. I have an invoice and it needs to go to 8 different people. So if I just set it up in the team and say it has to go here, it goes to those folks, they approve it, they can ask questions, and then it's done at its simplest level. But there's so much more that we can do on top of that. And that's what's great is it takes kind of what InfoPath used to be back in the day and, taking PowerShell and taking pure dev languages and sort of combining it all together where you could use it very simply for simple things that someone that isn't a coder could do up to some incredibly complex aspects.
So when I first looked at Teams and apps, probably a couple of years ago, I found it quite complex to know where to get started because at the time you had connectors.
Right.
So that was one of the first parts that came in, and for those that have seen those, you used to get a URL that pointed you to Outlook, a webhook URL, and you'd be able to post things into your channel.
Right.
And the first time I saw people use that, they were getting their other systems, it might have been PowerShell scripts in some cases, to post information that then landed inside Teams, so updates and stuff like that. And if you've already done a few things like those, you might have thought, perhaps, well, is that all there is to it, right? Where can we go beyond sort of the core sort of stuff like tabs, connectors, the stuff that is there really from the beginning of Teams in 2016, 2017?
Yeah, I think at its core, one of the terms that we've used a lot is citizen developers. And I think that's a very powerful term because what that means is anybody can create an app. Is that really true? I did a show starting in February last year, right before the pandemic with Paul Thurrott. It was Inside 360. You can see it on the Petri website. And we got to like episode 5 or 6. And Paul and I have been talking about Power Apps. And he's like, we should do a show on the when it was still like Flow, before it truly became Power Platform and all of that. It built that year.
Yeah.
And we got together for our pre-call and he's like, I'm really embarrassed. And I'm like, what do you mean, Paul? And he goes, I've been a developer for years. He knows all the way back. I think he knows Python and Cobalt and languages that folks don't use anymore. And he's like, I went into SharePoint lists and dumped in all of the different things I have in my bar at home, all the different liquors and mixers and all of that. And I created in about an hour an app on my phone where I could say, what gin drinks can I make based on what I have in the house? And I was able to do it. We had a story about a company in England, a company that sells tires, and one of their store mechanics said, I wish I had an app that could say, if it's this car, what rims go with it, and da da da. He built one in about 3 days. And now everybody in the company uses it. So I think at its core, yes, there's Power BI, which is amazing for marketing and for business people, which is part of that platform. But at its core, people can create a very simple app with something like a SharePoint list and bring it into a mobile app. And I've done it in a few hours with no help or incredibly little help from an actual developer who can say, oh, you can do this and make it more elegant or make it work faster or better. But if people went out and just tried it, I think they would be absolutely amazed at how simple it is. And that was what got to me, because I am the antithesis of a developer. I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum.
I always see two different aspects, though. I talk to IT pros, I talk to senior IT management, and one of the common things that comes from talking about the Power Platform and using the word citizen developer, it's not necessarily a dirty word. It's not something that makes them worry entirely, as long as they know that there's some sort of governance.
Right. Well, that's it.
And
that's what keeps it from being scary, is the governance and how you say, this is what you're allowed to do, and what is enough room to let people be creative, but not too much where you put your data at risk.
Yeah, and things like there's a center of excellence for Power Apps for managing that. But those are sort of core back end things that often people need to understand. Perhaps not after the first users have started building applications in the business, but there's a point that you need to get on top of those things. And I think without knowing that there's a way to govern it, then you should or will at some point start to worry about it. I've got a customer and they found that a critical process for their production line was reliant on Power Automate. Now that's a success story for Power Automate, I suppose. But it's also terrifying to learn that and not realize that somebody had done that inside the business. Loads of smart people. This is automotive manufacturer, and that's kind of terrifying for them to find that out. And then they've got to go back and find out if there's anything else that could be a concern, because you've got that massive benefit that this is clearly enabled.
Or an IT pro just saying, hey, we want to lock some of this stuff down because we're concerned, and all of a sudden parts of the business just stop working. And now you've gone from trying to make the company safer to all of a sudden having tens of thousands of dollars being lost for every hour that's down while you try to figure out what happened.
Well, that would be terrifying in itself if somebody just went in and made that kind of a change. You would hope.
Yes.
That,
but unfortunately,
if you're watching this,
we both
don't
know
just
folks
go
have done that, and it has happened. And hey, what is this old 386 under this person's desk do? And you pull the button, and all of a sudden, that was our invoicing system for the last 30 years, and little did you know. So
I'm going to admit there have been things like servers where there was a point where a few of them, when I worked a few jobs back in the past, where we decided that the best thing to do was switch it off and see who complained, because the people that managed it had left. No one had ever. We saw no traffic going to it. So, and you can understand. People will think, well, I've got to lock down Office 365. I'm gonna switch off this stuff. You do have to do some of that work first. You need to check. You do. But it's a balance, isn't it? Because you've got the ability for people to do things in the business, people that might want to do it, and then you've got the fact that you need to be able to support that as well. Citizen developer, though, it's
a frightening term. It is a frightening term, saying, hey, I'm going to empower people to on their own find ways to make the company better. Will someone do something wrong with that? And most of the time, it's not that it was malicious. They said, oh, this would make my job easier, but because, and this is what we found with the pandemic, folks went to roll out M365 much more quickly than they had planned. And I said from the beginning how impressed I was that IT pros got done in 3 months what they had planned to do in 2 to 3 years. The problem is, by getting it out so quickly, there were two key things that tended to get overlooked. Number one was the end user preparation. So folks did more than just use Teams for chat, but actually understood and used it as a collaborative platform. And number two was all of the security stuff that they then went back a few months later and took a look at and went, oh, we need to split tunnel to make this work better. We need to look at that. And it gave a time for people in there to go, oh, what does this do? And how could I play with this? And some great things came out of that. But going back, and you're exactly right, understanding what's there and why and allowing people to do that is key. But I think, back to the core of Power Platform, it gives companies and end users so many opportunities, not just to automate tasks, but to create new areas of business expertise and to allow anybody to do something that can help the company to move forward and be more productive, from the simplest workflow to the most complex app that allows somebody to be able to do multiple things at the same time, or do it easier, or to be able to share information with less work, or bring AI into it, where it could take a look at a message or a picture or something and say, this is X, and because of that, it has to go to this person, or it goes here, or this is broken. And it starts off a whole workflow that can allow people to get more done in less time, which is good for everybody. And that's really at the core of the Power Platform.
So when we bring it into Teams, one of the aspects that helps tick that governance box, I think, immediately, is the idea that Power Apps in Teams already follow a known governance model.
Yeah.
So Microsoft 365 Groups, when it was introduced to me, when I was talking to customers, that they got the idea that we had a single membership model for lots of different applications. And that solved a lot of problems in terms of giving people permissions to lots of different things. Teams came along and built on top of that, and that sort of supercharged all of that. And bringing Power Apps into that with the Dataverse gives things a different sort of tilt, where it isn't the Wild West.
Right.
There's a model that you're going to fit in. So there's a model that works with deployment.
Right.
And there's a model that works with building the apps as well.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know what the Dataverse is and all of that sort of model, what's the easiest way of breaking it down?
There is so much information that companies generate internally. And the question is, how do we pick the important nuggets and the wheat from the chaff? And that's what's really great, is you're basically building a workflow that says, this is what's important to me, find that and bring that here, while other bits of data are not important to other people. Data points, information, conversations. I remember one company said, because a lot of that Power Platform, Power Apps, its early predecessor was Delve. And people have said, we have reduced the amount of duplication by being able to see what other people are working on, or to quickly search and say, who else has done a project like this? And if it failed, go, why did your project fail? I didn't even know that you guys did one on new hamburger trends. Why did it not work out? What was not good about it? And how do we learn from that? So the reduction of duplication is amazing. Now, when you add that to data, how can I take a look at this raw data and bring it, visualize it in a way that not only makes sense to me, but helps only give me what I need, whether that's through Power BI, whether that's through a search, whether that's through AI and automation. All of that can come together. And the fact that you can then take that and give that same piece to a mobile person, to a desktop person, and have it be organized in a way that makes the best sense for them. And that's what's really great, is not everybody needs a 60-inch TV screen. Some people like to watch things on their phone or on a laptop or on a tablet. And what's great is you're taking that information and putting it in the platform that makes the best sense for the person, for the way they want to use it, where they want to use it, and how. From a phone at a Starbucks to sitting at a 50-inch screen at a data center, you're able to look at that same data, but only have it show you what's important to you in your role.
So the fundamentals of the data itself, though, that when you build a Power App in Teams, that data doesn't live inside Teams particularly.
No. You're pulling it from SQL, or you're pulling it from SharePoint lists, or wherever that data can reside. And that's what's great is you could keep it very simple, like I said, like a SharePoint list, to something incredibly more complex where it's pulling down from the cloud. It can be pulling from Exchange. It can be pulling from Active Directory if you're looking for information on people and jobs and services. So that's what's great is it's all there. It's all in the cloud. Hopefully, for those who are doing it, you can do it on-prem as well or hybrid. But that access is there, and that's what's great is what information do I need to give people access to, and you can limit it to that so that you're not having to worry that you're giving away the store.
So SharePoint list or Microsoft list,
Microsoft list,
which is effectively the same data. That permissions for those, data access for those, aligned to your existing team memberships. The Dataverse,
or SAP or Salesforce or anyone, or Jira or any one of those. So it could be a wide. You can even pull it, from your own security logs. Every time I want an app that shows me when this happens within our own company's security. Every time a new outside user logs into our Wi-Fi. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and you can do that, and that's what's great.
Yeah. Well, that's it. You've got to start somewhere, though. So I can imagine all of the different things that somebody could be thinking about, all of the different things that they could access. So I know a colleague of mine was building a system, doing some of the things that you're talking about. And what they did was they built an app. Power Apps, obviously, was at the front end to that, where they've actually taken the feed from a security camera. So that it would automatically find when the campus bus arrived and then alert people.
Interesting.
That was part of the overall solution. Yeah. So taking data from not just SQL servers on-prem or your Wi-Fi system, but all of those.
Any data storage.
But thinking about some of those simple, what's inside the product use case. You've got the Dataverse, which is what was something known as CDS, came really from the dynamic side. But that's included in Teams now, and that's effectively like a SQL database light, in effect. But it's a part of it, scoped to your team, so you can build an app on top of that. As you say, a SharePoint list as well to store the data in, build on top of that as well. And then you've got opportunities to reach out, bring it in from other applications. So Power BI dashboards, bringing in SQL data to those to show to people. And then what else have we got? We've got Power Automate to make it go and do things in other places.
Right, kind of replacing the old info path and really putting it on steroids in many ways.
So what kind of good use cases have you seen for Power Automate? Because we all hear the save an email attachment automatically to your OneDrive.
I mean, I do one where actually every time my boss emails me, it gives me a custom message on my phone, which I really like. That it actually shows up and says boss email. So that, and if that's only if it's to me and no one else on the team, and I'm not in a CC and part of a conversation. So that was the first one I ever built. That one's pretty easy, and there's a ton of templates that you can use on our page. But I think a lot of the other ones are item, follow-ups from meetings and action item follow-ups. And I think, like I said, my favorite was a guy who worked for a tire company who said, hey, if I could just be able to look at our inventory across other stores within 25 miles, if we don't have something in stock, that's better than saying, come back on Thursday, saying this store has it now. Do you want to pay for it and be able to go there? And now the whole company uses it. So we're seeing things like that going from incredibly simple to alert me when this happens, all the way up to new ways to think about empowering end users who are not developers to be able to build a simple app to allow them to find information better and easier. And that's at its core probably, the best thing. And again, it's going to work on every different device. If they're on an Android phone or iOS or an iPad, no matter how they're working, that works beautifully. And that's what's great is it's so cross-platform as you take a look at it. We're going to have a bunch of announcements March 2nd and 3rd at our Spring Ignite. And of course, Build will be a big moment, and we'll be adding a lot more information on where we see Power Platform and our AI platform going. And we've also done a few shows on my show about the Power Platform with some of the guys from our engineering team that I really encourage folks to check out, because they actually do some live examples and show some really cool stuff that they built. And I think it's just one of those, watch some of these, go on YouTube, see somebody build a basic Power App, mimic it, and then go, hey, now that I get this, how could I use this myself? It is really that easy. And the only thing keeping you from doing this is, for most people, is themselves and people saying, like me, I'm not a coder.
Well, that's it. Most of the people that you see blogging or creating YouTube videos about Power Automate, they aren't coders, but they're doing really complex things. And so you've got those personal flows, you've got group flows where you're going to either the dedicated app or the website. Then it's got the RPA stuff, the desktop automation, that getting into those sort of areas where it's branching into the areas where third-party products were sort of brought in to follow macros on worker machines. But then inside Teams, you've got Power Automate as an app itself, where you can build those flows inside Teams. But also you've got the new approvals as well, which can launch those processes, which is pretty cool. Then on the other side, you were talking about how we're really, going to your example of going into stock processes outside of the platform. Then you've got that branches into logic apps as well, right? So you end up with these three sort of levels. In Teams is sort of the thing where build it in Teams. You're actually going to manage some of the permissions for that as well.
Yep. And I built a simple app. It's great. I took it in with Twitter because I have a lot of followers, so that if some new folks follow me, it sends me a list of the new followers and it flags them if they don't have a picture or a description next to their name. So it says, do you want to follow all these people? And it will flag the ones that don't, saying yes or no. So I'll take a look at the username and make decisions. Also, if somebody directly does it and has any of the keywords that I'm looking for, like Teams or things like that, it will also send me an email with that request. And I've set it up where I can respond via email and it posts it back in Twitter. So I've automated some of that because I'm my own social media team. I don't have a whole team of folks working for me. It's just me. But it makes it so much easier to, again, separate what's important and what I need to know. And people that are trying to get a hold of me, that's not a direct message, or that have pinged something that relates to me and somebody I'm not following, and it brings that in for me. And I built that over like 2 weeks over Christmas just for fun. And I keep tweaking it and making it better. But I was amazed at how easy something like that was to be able to build.
So that reminds me of when I talk to IT pros that I work with as customers. There's a sort of a common thread that goes through that, where IT pros who have tried to do things like you've done, trying to automate some of their job or some of the stuff that sits around outside of their life. That's where they can build some of those skills themselves. And that might be automating notifications. I was talking to a customer last week, and they had automated a lot of the JML process for things like people like temps. Usually you'll have a third-party system, a Workday or something like that, to do it for permanent employees. But edge processes like that, and that's a common thing I've seen, where it's a good way to build up your skills. But after you've got to understand this, where do people go then to? How do you find the people in the business to start showcasing all of your new skills, so you can teach them to fish?
And that's where things like, becoming an MVP or doing your own webinars or becoming a guest on a show like yours or things like that's a great opportunity. I think the ultimate goal for every IT pro, and this has not changed in the 25 years that I've been doing this, is to go from being reactive to proactive. And the best way to do that is, you've got like 20 screens of information, from security to logins to where's the data going to what's got to be backed up to compliance and all of that. The more of that you can automate and bring into a single screen, that's really showing you two things: trends, which is important, and outliers. This is odd and weird. Why is this here? Why is this one user suddenly backed up 16 gigs of data, or move 16 gigs of files here? Or why has this person's Outlook, where they had a 20 gig inbox, suddenly goes to 1 gig? Outliers, as well as, hey, we're seeing a lot more issues here. We're seeing more people bang on this file. That's really critical. And that's where you can use some of these to show you those key areas, which again takes you from putting out fires to going, ooh, that looks weird. And that's something we've done a really good job with our security suite that says, hey, this person's logged in from 2 different cities in the last half hour. That doesn't sound right. You should take a look at that. To, hey, this person just logged in 4 times from 4 cities. I'm locking out their account and making you aware. And we have automation that does that. So being able to automate some of that allows you to be in more places at once and use your time more valuably, which means better work-life balance, less hours, and more that you're able to get done. And that's the goal for every IT pro. And this is one of many tools that you can now leverage in your toolbox to help you do that better and smarter.
I think you might have encouraged a few people to start exploring how they can build their own apps rather than buying E5 licenses.
Yeah, or going out, try building it yourself and get the concept down before you go hire a developer. It's great to hire a developer. There's nothing wrong with that. I know some amazing developers, but if you go, look, here's what I was able to build, but this is what I want to do, they go, I got it. What if we did this, 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 and this? You've now given them a really good place to start rather than spending your first 2 weeks on what should it do and how should it look. You've done all that. You've said, look, here's the blueprint from my house and the color scheme I want. Now, and I've built kind of one room. Can you build the rest of the house based on this? And it's much easier, and you will save time and money and get what you want and know how to build upon that later. So it's becoming such an incredibly valuable skill. And I think you hit it on the head. And this is a really important tool that people should start to take a look at more seriously if they haven't already, because it's absolutely in your benefit. Whatever time you spend, you're going to get back at least tenfold.
And finally, thinking about IT Pro, they've done all this sort of stuff. They've really sort of went to town on it. Now they want to try and teach people inside the departments how to get a hold of this themselves. Because it's potentially either a career opportunity or it's going to save them building the apps for them. How do you sort of start to identify where there's business processes inside the company you work for that could benefit from these kind of technologies, so you can introduce yourself to them and help?
I think most IT pros and most people who are running IT for a company or even as a consultant, it's sitting down with the people at the lowest levels. I mean, before, years ago when I was in college, I worked in restaurants, and I realized the best way to be a restaurant manager was if you could jump behind any station, from prep to salads to the bar to dessert to running food to front desk. When you understood everybody's job, you were able to be a better manager and you got respect. I think it's important for you to go into the warehouse, if there's a warehouse, and see how the warehouse folks do, and look for things that go, God, that seems really timely or really painstaking. Sit down with your HR people and your accounting people. The more you understand different people's jobs and you say, what takes you the longest amount to do? What is the one part of your job that really bogs you down or takes a lot of time? The more you understand it, that you'll be able to create very often simple things that will greatly reduce that, and from there build on it. But it requires you not to look down saying, what do I want people to do? But to understand where their pain is. Be a bit of a therapist. Where's your pain? And going, hey, I can't solve that, but I think I can make it better. And in doing that, your IT's becoming an enabler, not the department of no. And you're going to get a lot of fans who are going to say, hey, IT came to us with this, they did it, and this has been game changing. Then there's some things going, they gave it to us and it was just too hard to learn. And that's where you go, okay, maybe I need to bring in a developer because the idea is right, but the execution is too wieldy. But you got to know other people's jobs and what they're doing. None of us can sit and go, yep, that's how you should do your job. It just doesn't work.
And that's how you, on one case, you see people who have came from the business into IT and they've really sort of taken on the Power Platform. But as an IT program in the other sort of way, I think it's important to say you've got to become a good listener. As you say, a therapist. That's the sort of crucial piece of advice that I'd certainly want to impart as well. Because
yes, be a therapist. Yes,
it's easy to go and tell everybody about the technology, and they go, "Good, okay."
Yeah, I got 8 other products that do that. I'm just trying to get my job done. And if you don't understand, well, this is your job and this is what you have to get done each day and this is how difficult it is, if I could make that little bit a little bit easier, that would be beneficial to you, rather than saying, yeah, we're going to change the way you do everything, and now we're all going to collaborate here and do our documents here. People are going to go, no, I'm doing it this way and it's fine. People don't like change unless there's a dramatic benefit in there for them.
That's it. What's in it for me?
Right. Exactly.
But the first step to that, you've got to listen. You've got to hear what they say, and then give them a solution back.
Yeah.
Because IT, I know this myself, we can be very good at broadcasting things that people have and throwing it over the fence without really sort of listening to what the problem is that we need to solve.
Yeah.
And as you say, getting the hard hat on and going out there with the business. Mm-hmm. I've seen Microsoft folks do that with customers as well.
Oh, yeah.
And that's that to me was the biggest change I'd seen in Microsoft, where they went out with I saw some of the TSP chaps go out with a construction company.
Yeah.
They were out in the vans and everything, really trying to understand how the business worked. Mm-hmm. And how many people in IT truly do that for the rest of the business?
Yeah, I don't know a lot of them. And I think, and again, it's often because they're so being reactive to everything because they haven't updated those processes. They haven't gotten to, using best of breed is great, but if you have 15 different apps, they don't talk to each other, and you're going to spend all your day trying to bring all that together and look for that. So the more you start to use less vendors or create automation to bring that together, that's going to get you to that point, and that's going to allow you to do it. And you're going to get a lot of respect. You're going to be able to really help the company innovate and be not a cost center, but an area where you're helping to bring more value to the company, which helps you to get more money for the things that you need to do to help move the company forward. And it's, it is a lot of that. So yeah, learn what your company does and how they do it, and sit with the lowliest people and get to understand their jobs and hear what their pain is. Be the therapist. I think that is the walk away from today, Steve.
That is brilliant. So yeah, you can learn about it yourself, help yourself become less reactive, mm-hmm. give yourself more time, and then go and do those things. Yeah. That's interesting. That really is. Thank you very much for joining us on the show today, Stephen. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
You've got a new webcast coming soon. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that before you go?
We're about to start season 3 of our Inside Microsoft Teams webcast. Folks can check that out at aka.ms/InsideMSTeams. We have some great guests. We have Envision, who's talking about how they rolled out a internship program to 500 people in 4 weeks in Teams. We have Lego coming on the show, which I love chatting with them, and they do some really cool, innovative stuff. I have Paul Thurrott, Mary Jo Foley, and Brad Sams coming on for our Ignite show. We have some other great guests and some really cool hardware that we show off. So I encourage people to check it out. It is every 3 or 4 weeks on Tuesdays. If they go to the site, they can get the calendar for the guests. So it's great. So, and I may have to have you on, Steve. I'm looking for co-hosts for different shows. And if you're interested, would love to have you co-host an episode with me. I'm serious.
Well, I won't say no to that.
All right.
Thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you.